Once upon a time, I was a crackhead. From a very young age, I never felt like I fit in. I found myself using alcohol as a coping mechanism at a very, very young age. I had the first puff, and the first thing that popped into my mind is, where the fuck can I get more of this? Because I felt unreal.
Yeah.
From a guy that lacked confidence, from a guy that had struggled to fit in and connect with people, all of a sudden I could talk to anyone. I felt unstoppable. When you're using ice, your whole world revolves around it and you forget about everything else going on outside of you. And so I got caught with a heap of ice. I got locked up a total of 6 times because of my ice addiction. Sitting in jail and going, where the fuck am I? What have I done to myself? That's me. I'm that fucking loser. When I found out that my partner at the time was pregnant with my son, something switched in my head and I was like, I need to make this change. Realising that there's a little boy out there who's got a father who's not present. Realising that I wasn't doing anything with this second chance at life that I've been given. So that's why I do what I do, man. Most men are coming to me rock bottom. They're literally on the bones of their ass, about to break up.
What do you think is the biggest reason why men struggle so much with a lack of self-worth?
I mean, if we go to like the root of it all, it always comes back to
All right, welcome back to the show. I have an unbelievable guest for you all today, Mr. Ben Lowe. Welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much for having me on, Chris.
You're welcome, man. So Ben is a men's coach. He's the founder of the New Age Man, and he's helping men break free of self-sabotage and empowering them to become high-value partners, fathers, and businessmen. Man, welcome,
like a salesman.
Welcome. Man,
Thank you, bro.
I'm
Thank
so
you for
excited
having me.
to dive into this today because I haven't known you all that long. But since I have, I have got to know you a little bit more, and I absolutely love what you're doing. And I think part of that is because the men that you help is definitely a past version of me.
Yeah,
at some point.
I feel that, bro.
Oh man. And so, when I met you and started seeing what you were doing and started consuming your content, I was like, fuck, this is just like, if I was me 10 years ago, that would speak directly to me. And I know how many men out there right now that's still speaking directly to. So I just want to kick this off and, open the floor or the mic for you to just introduce yourself a little bit and give yourself a backstory into how you got to where you are and why you chose, out of everything, to help men and do what you're doing.
Okay, man. So that's really good, I guess, way to open up, right? So a bit about myself. Yeah, I'm 32 years old and I struggled with ice addiction for 8 years. I guess just touching on that real quick, that's probably the main reason behind what I do. But let's take it back to childhood, right? Back to me 13 years old is probably where I'll start because that's the most memorable thing I can remember from childhood. And up until this point in my life, I would say that I had the perfect childhood from the outside looking in, right? We lived in a nice house. Mum and dad had pretty good jobs. I had a little sister. Fuck, life was good, man. Life was good from the outside looking in, right? But when I turned 13, my parents split up, and things were pretty chaotic from here on out. My mum is a very typical anxious attachment. Dad's very avoidant. And so, understanding this now with the work that I've done with myself, I see why their relationship broke down. Yep. And she was chaotic, man. Mum was chaotic as. And so at the age of 13, I was skateboarding a lot and I hang around the skate park, and a lot of the boys at the skate park smoke weed, they drink, that sort of stuff. And so I found myself using alcohol as a coping mechanism at a very, very young age. And now, once again, going back to childhood, just thinking about that whole situation there, another big, I guess, catalyst to the reason that I used alcohol as a coping mechanism was because from a very young age, I never felt like I fit in. I never felt like I belonged. I never felt like I could gel with people. I went to Anglican Church Grammar School in Brisbane, which is a quite prestigious school.
Yeah.
And once again, didn't really fit in. I wasn't academic. I wasn't really sporty. So I just sort of just cruised by. Never really felt like I connected to other people because I always felt like I was different. And I knew that from a very, very young age. So once again, back to 13, started drinking. And I was drinking most weekends. I was obviously hanging around the wrong sorts of people. And fast forward to 15, I started smoking weed quite heavily.
Yeah.
At the time, my mum, who I was living with, my parents split up obviously. My mum at the time, she gave me an ultimatum. And if you had asked me back then, I would have told you she kicked me out of home, right?
Right.
Playing the victim.
Right.
Right? Feel sorry for me. This is how I get my needs met at this age.
Yeah.
Right? 100%. And that's how I always got my needs met as a younger man.
Yeah.
But come 15, she gave me the ultimatum. She's like, you either toe the line, you follow the rules, or you move out. And so here I was 15 years old out in the big bad world all by myself.
Chose to leave.
Yeah, so I chose to leave. I chose to turn my back on my family. And once again, even with my family, I never really felt like I fit in.
Yeah.
I've got cousins who are like doctors and dentists and all that sort of stuff. And here I am selling drugs. So 15 years old, I moved out of home. Like I said, I was smoking weed quite regularly.
Mm-hmm.
I guess this is really where the entrepreneur in me kicked in, right? And I think I got that from my father. He was a businessman.
Yeah.
And like I said, I was smoking weed. I was also working at McDonald's, which was my first and only real job.
Yeah.
And I was trying to take myself to school still. Yeah. What I noticed was that I got really, really sick because of the stress of doing all these things. And so I was like, something has to give. Yeah. And so I started selling weed and realized I was making a lot more money doing that than I was working at McDonald's, and getting a lot more out of that in my young brain, I guess, if you could look at it that way, rather than going to school.
Yep.
And I was like, well, I'm just going to drop out of school. I'm going to stop working. I'm going to go full time on this.
Yep.
And so 15 years old, I started selling, and obviously, like I said, I started smoking pot, but not long after selling it as well.
Yeah. And if you take the drugs off of it, like, you know, it's attractive to make money fast, right? And when you're at that age and you see it coming in with a lot less effort and a lot less stress, then, you know, if you are a little bit more wired to be an entrepreneur, then that's going to signal to you that, hey, like this is retarded. Like, why am I spending all this time here living this life when I could be living this life?
Yeah, well, I'm not leveraging my time, right?
That's right. But you don't really consider the consequences, I'm sure, really that much at that age.
Oh, man. No idea. Well, this is the thing as well. Like, for anyone that knows, for anyone that uses drugs, they you know that you're in a disassociated state. Of
course. Like,
you're completely shut off from the world. Like, you just got this little nest of people that you hang around who do the drugs. And it's like, there's no consequences, especially smoking weed.
100%.
You don't think there's consequences.
Yeah.
And I guess that sort of then led to a lot of other stuff, right? Yeah. But let's just touch on that again for a second. Like, there's obviously the easy money. But for me, the big part of that was, once again, not fitting in.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to be around you when you've got drugs.
Of course.
You know,
you're the best one ever, man. Like, you're fun.
Power. Significance.
100%.
You know, and so that was a really, really big thing for me and it still rung true all through my life. So we'll get to, I guess, this in a sec, but I sold drugs for 15 years. Yeah. Flat out. That's the only thing I did for 15 years.
Yeah.
You know, so once again, the whole time through that, it wasn't about the money. It wasn't about it definitely was about the money, because that gives you power as well.
Of course.
It wasn't about the drugs themselves. Like, I was addicted to drugs, but I could take it and leave it any time. But for me, it was the power that I was addicted to.
Yeah.
The feeling of importance.
Yeah.
But yeah, so 15, started selling weed. Yeah. Fast forward to 18, I'd moved back in with my dad at the time. So again, we were still clashing a lot because my drug business had really taken off after I moved back into home. I had guys coming and going from the house, just treating him like it was stupid. Like, he'd literally come home, open my bedroom door, and I'm there smoking cones. And like, I'd been literally just blowing the cone out the window before he walked in, and treating him like he was stupid, like he had no idea what was going on.
Wow.
You know, just like, this is the level of incompetence I had around what was going on. Like, the level of, you know, like, I was so unaware of what I was doing.
Yeah.
And treating everyone like they was stupid, right? Which I guess a lot of, you know, young men do.
Yeah.
It's like, they don't know.
No.
They don't know. You got no idea what I'm going through.
I'm 5 steps ahead.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm so smart.
100%. And once again, I got myself into some trouble here as well, because I was partying a lot. Yeah. And obviously had a lot of stuff built up from childhood, which meant that when I'd get on the piss, I'd do dumb shit. Yeah. You know, so I'd started the habit of breaking into cars and breaking into houses when I was drunk. And so I remember I went to this party one night. We didn't really know anyone there. I think we got invited there with some old school friends of mine. And we went to this party, and about 2 or 3 hours into it, I was pissed, rotten drunk. And me and one of the boys were like, let's go for a walk and see what we can get. And I remember just coming back with a backpack full of like GPSs and car head units and all sorts of stuff and things we'd taken from people's houses. Yeah, that then led to a few days later, my house getting raided by the police. And I got charged with my first charge, which was 54 break and enters. So
your first charge.
First charge was 54 break and enters at 16, 17, something like that. So wow. I guess I got my timeline a little bit mixed up there. So I moved back into home, 16 or 17. So about a year out of being out of home. And then it was just before my 18th birthday where I think I got hit with my first charge. Crazy. And like I said, my drug business has really taken off here. And my relationship with my dad just deteriorated from there. So that was definitely the nail in the coffin for my relationship with my dad at the time. Yeah. And so before long, I was back out on my own. And once again, like, not having a job, I just been selling drugs. I was meant to be going to TAFE to get my Year 12 certificate, because obviously in my young mind, being taught what we got taught at school, you're never going to make it anywhere or be anyone if you don't get your Year 12 certificate, right?
100%.
So I still had that mindset around that. So I went to TAFE, and all I did at TAFE was sell drugs. Because, like, you know, you go to TAFE, it's like everyone there is smoking pot.
Yeah.
I was only going to TAFE to sell drugs.
To make money.
Yeah, to make money, right?
Yep.
So it was just the same mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, had moved back in with my dad, fucked up again, got charged with this 54 breaks, and ended up getting kicked out. He's like, don't come back, sort of thing. And so this then led to me drinking, not just on the weekends, but every day, and I was smoking weed almost every day. I moved into a share house, and my life literally just revolved around selling drugs. I'd get up in the morning, smoke a cone. I'd play Modern Warfare 2. Remember those days?
Yeah.
Modern Warfare 2.
Mate.
The boys would come and go from the share house, and like the guy that owned the house, he was living downstairs. He smoked pot as well, so I was just paying him rent and weed every week. So it's just like this whole little thing just sort of come together.
Yeah.
And some of the guys that I was hanging around were getting into their harder drugs. So I was just about to turn 18. They were all in the rave scene. And I remember going to pick up my weed one day, and I was with a mate of mine, and we seen them passing the glass pipe around. And things graduated pretty quickly, right? My mate said to me, he's like, oh, should we have a go at that? And I'm like, man, I've never done it before. I'm like, have you? He's like, yeah. He's like, trust me, it'd be the best thing you ever do.
Of course.
I was like, right. And I remember sitting down with my mate whose house it was, we were getting the stuff off. And he looked me in the eyes, because I knew this guy for a long time. And he goes, are you sure you want this? I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, well, I can promise you that your life will never be the same. I can promise you, every single one of you listening, that he was 100% right. So I had the first puff, and the first thing that popped into my mind is, where the fuck can I get more of this? Because I felt unreal.
Yeah. From
a guy that lacked confidence, from a guy that had no self-worth, from a guy that struggled to fit in and connect with people, all of a sudden I could talk to anyone. I felt unstoppable.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to condone drug use here at all, or ice use, but that was what it was for me. It was literally the best feeling I'd ever had in my life. And I'm like, how do I get more of that? Which then leads to that slippery slope of addiction.
Bro, I relate to that so much. It was the same thing for me. Like, I'm pretty open about my use from probably like 16 to 22. Like, there was a solid years there, but it was that feeling of like certain substances just making you feel alive and making you feel normal and making you feel confident. And it's not just
making you feel like you're enough almost.
That's right. It's not the rush. It's not the rush. Like, of course the high was amazing, right? And like, let's just be honest, like the high is insane and it feels good. That's what it's designed to do. That's why it's addictive.
The sex is better. Like, everything you do is better. Like, everything is better on it, right?
Right. Then there's
temporarily.
Temporarily. Yeah. And it is that feeling of just, I don't know, you feel like you come into yourself for a while and you're like, I found a bit of home within myself. Like,
almost peace.
Yeah, there's like this
when
inner
you've been
peace.
so chaotic for so long in yourself, right? Yeah.
And this is some of the stuff that we even teach with our trainings where, we talk about addiction and how easy it is to judge people. But if we actually map their nervous system and go, we've got 3 zones, like we've got the middle zone, the green zone where we feel connected to ourselves, and we've got fight or flight, and then we've got shut down freeze.
Yeah.
When people are in states of their nervous system that are either hyper-aroused or hypo-aroused, the thing that they're using is just trying to get them home.
That's right. They're trying to come back to themselves.
That's right. Yeah. So if you generally see someone who's really anxious and wound up, they typically use downers. Right? They're not going to go for more uppers. If we see someone that's really depressed and flat, they typically use uppers because they need something to get them up. And when I really started looking at this, because my father was a drug addict before he took his life a few years ago. If I had only known this then, what I know now, it would have removed so much judgment around what he was using, and it would have helped me understand where he was at and what his nervous system was needing to just feel fucking normal. Yep. And so I get it. And I think for anyone out there listening, like obviously we're talking about heavy drug use here, but what's the context that's really important to take out of it is that, for some people it makes them feel alive and home for the first time in their life, and that's the actual addiction. And I almost had goosebumps, man, when you were like, he looked at me in the eyes and he said, are you sure you want this? It's like he knew how powerful this stuff was. Yeah. And he knew that by you having it, there was almost like this piece of conscience there, I don't know if you do want this. Like, are you sure you do?
That's right.
Honestly gave me chills, bro. Like,
and that was a really pivotal moment for me. I specifically remember sitting on his bed in his house in Mount Gravatt, right? And I remember the house specifically. I remember everything about that moment. Yeah. Because my life completely changed from that moment. Yeah. And so I smoked ice for the first time at 18. And for the next 8 years of my life, I pretty much spent my entire life chasing it, selling it, smoking it. Yeah. I do whatever I had to do. But once again, I always had that business mindset. Yeah. So I was like, right, where can I get more of this? How can I sell more of this? I know mates that like this stuff. Yeah. Let's just upgrade from weed now to ice. Yeah. And literally, like, the next 8 years would have probably been something that you'd expect to see on an Underbelly TV episode. Fast forward to 20 years old. Obviously, like, I'd been using ice every day at this point. my whole life revolved around the drug. I was driving all over Brisbane, all down to the Gold Coast, everywhere just to drop it off in little bits and pieces, and I was sleeping maybe, 2 or 3 times a week, if that.
2 or 3 times a week?
If that, man. At my heyday, I was in double digits before I'd sleep.
Wow,
and
man.
everything just revolved around this drug, right? I never injected. I was always smoking it.
Yeah.
But it got to a point where I was smoking meth, like crystal meth, which is just like kind of put you on another level. Like if you smoke that for the first time, you're probably going to be up for 2 or 3 days after a couple of puffs, depending on the purity.
Yeah.
And I was getting to a point where I was smoking it to go to sleep. Like that's how immune my body was to it. And fast forward to 20, and once again, like everything, when you're using ice, your whole world revolves around it, and you forget about everything else going on outside of you. Yeah. And so I forgot about disqualified driving charges that I had, because I'd lost my license when I was 16. I lost my learners, couldn't drive, and I kept getting caught driving. And I got caught for a disqualified driving charge about 3 months prior to this, and didn't show up to court because I completely forgot about the court date. And so I moved into a house with a girl that I'd been seeing at the time. We were both obviously very heavily into the ice scene. Yep. I was selling it. She'd go to her day job, and I'd probably sleep most times if I could. If not, I'd be out, running the drugs around. Mm-hmm. And I remember it was probably 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and I heard something happening downstairs. We were getting ready to go to bed, right? And I think this was like on a Friday maybe. And I walked downstairs, and as I walked down the stairs, I seen police opening the door, right, guns out, drawn, and there was like 4 or 5 detectives coming into my house, and I freaked the fuck out, ran back up the stairs, and they rushed me. And I was trying to get upstairs where I had all the drugs, and they got to me beforehand. And so, I got caught with a heap of ice, heap of acid tabs, just like heaps of little shit, right?
Yeah.
But the reason they're actually at the house was for a disqualified driving charge, right?
No way.
But they obviously, I think the neighbours had reported suspicious activity at the house. And I think at this point in time, I've been being watched for a little while.
Yeah.
And so the way that they obviously came in really gave that away.
Yeah.
And so got bail on that. And then about a month or 2 later, once again, skipped court again. And this time they came for a return to prison warrant. So because I'd skipped bail, they put me in jail. And so the first time that I went to jail was for 3 or 4 weeks just because of those charges, right? With the ice and everything like that, I got minor misdemeanors and everything got put on probation. Mm-hmm. I think I served, like 3 or 4 weeks, right? Yeah. And then got put on parole or put on bail for that. Yep. The previous charges I had were obviously like breaking and enters and all that sort of stuff. And I was on probation for that as well.
Yeah.
So this time I got put on parole. I had to report every week, all that sort of stuff. But so that was 20, first time going to jail. And then from 20 years old to 26, which is when I stopped smoking ice, I was in and out of jail another 5 times. So I got locked up a total of 6 times because of my ice addiction. Wow. Spent 4 years behind bars in total. And out of that, the longest was 1.5 years. And that was the real turning point for me. Because I was sitting in jail, and I remember just looking around and going, where the fuck am I? What am I doing, right? And I actually had long enough to dry out where I could actually start to see what was happening in my life, because I was so high all the time. The drugs were really affecting my level of consciousness. Yeah. I thought it was all a big game. I thought it was all a big joke till, really sat there for one day. I remember sitting in the yard just going, where the fuck am I? What have I done to myself? And I remember looking around, seeing, because I was working in the reception wing at the jail, so everyone that comes into the jail goes to the same place. Mm-hmm. And I remember looking around, seeing the same guys coming in and out, just thinking, look at these fucking losers. They've been in and out of jail 3 times this year. And I was like, the penny drop. That's me. I'm that fucking loser. Mm. And so, yeah, man, I got out from there the last time and studied a course to become a personal trainer, because in jail I found fitness, and that was something that really saved me. Yeah. Just being able to, first of all, make myself feel good about myself for the first time in my life without drugs and alcohol, because I was, not lifting weights, doing push-ups, doing pull-ups, but training hard. Yeah. And the endorphins that came from that, I was like, what do you mean I can do this without taking drugs? I can get that same feeling to some degree, right? Yeah. Obviously, you can't compare that to drugs at all, because you're trying to replace something that gives you this massive spike of dopamine with one thing. It's like all the other little things that add up, right? But we'll talk about that more in a second. But for me, fitness was the real turning point. Yep. And so I got out of jail, and I was like, well, fitness saved my life. I'd love to be able to use that to save other people's lives. Love it. And yeah, man. So I then found out that my partner at the time was pregnant with my son, William. He's now 6. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful little soul. Honestly, he's completely saved my life, because I got out of jail, and even though I was doing the PT thing, I was still smoking meth. pretty much all the time. I was still selling drugs, you know, because I thought, you know, the PT thing would be cool, but let me just get myself there first by keeping myself afloat with the drug dealing, right? But when I found out that my partner at the time was pregnant with my son, something switched in my head and I was like, I need to make this change. And so I got away from that whole scene, the whole ice scene, right? And man, I was more broke than I've been in my entire life because I wasn't selling drugs anymore. And realised that I hadn't, at this point in time, I was probably about 6 months in my PT career.
Yeah.
You know, I realised that I hadn't been putting time into the PT thing because I knew that I'd just go out and sell some drugs, it'd be sweet. Mm-hmm. But I guess something that I still really hold a lot of shame around, and I guess hold a lot of guilt around as well, is the fact that I actually walked away from his mum while she was pregnant, because I knew that if I didn't remove myself from that situation, that I'd never change. But I was too weak to do that, right? Just to paint a picture of who I was then, I was too weak to walk away from her, just be like, hey, I'm done. I met a girl at the gym and, you know, we ended up seeing each other. And I left the mother of my child for another woman because I was just a very, very weak man. I didn't have the self-worth to be able to walk away and be alone, which was a very big fear of abandonment I had from childhood stuff, right? So that was the guy I was then. And so I got away from the ice scene, but then obviously found cocaine and drinking instead. You know, so I replaced one coping mechanism with another.
Yep.
And then for the next, let's say 26, for the next 4 years, I was drinking, snorting every weekend, fucking as many girls as I could. And I guess, you know, then coming to a point where my son was 4 years old, he's now 6, realising that I hadn't been present in his life at least for the first 6 months. And then even when I had him and was spending time with him, I wasn't a present father because I was recovering from the weekend, or I'd cancel things to go and do. I obviously cancel times that I had with him or plans I had with him because I'd be going to party, or I'd be there with him and I'd be on Tinder, you know, while he's there trying to play with me, just wanting my attention. And once again, I had this other penny drop moment where I just woke up on it was the 2nd of January, and I remember waking up with a black eye, right, after a New Year's Eve party or New Year's Day party that I'd been at, and made an absolute mess of myself there, and punched on with my housemate. That's why I had a black eye, and crashed my car into the front fence of my house. And I woke up on the 2nd of January and I was just like, who the fuck am I? What am I doing? Realising that there's a little boy out there who's got a father who's not present. Realising that I wasn't doing anything with this second chance at life that I've been given, because obviously being in and out of the jail system, like, it's very rare that people go to jail 6 times, you know, and get out of that system.
100%.
You know, it becomes a revolving door.
Yeah.
And I just, had this moment of, I need to do better. And so I started 75 Hard that day, and it completely changed my life. So 75 days of no drugs, no alcohol, 2 training sessions per day, drinking 4 litres of water, reading 10 pages of a book for the people that know what it is. There's a couple other things in there as well. Taking a progress photo, I think.
Yeah, something like that. No sugar, no junk food.
Yeah, that's right. So it's just like following a strict diet.
Yeah.
And that completely changed me.
Yeah.
And after that, like at the end of the 75 days, I ended up having my first boxing fight. Never boxed before. Started a fight camp that was like one of those corporate fighters, be your own champ type thing.
Yeah.
And it just showed me what I was really capable of.
Yeah.
And so fast forward to, I guess, now with what I do with helping men. I know for a fact that there's so many men out there that struggle in that same cycle that I was in, that self-sabotage. And if we come back to what it actually all came back to, it was a lack of self-worth. Yeah. All dysfunctional human behavior comes back to a lack of self-worth. Yeah. Drugs, alcohol, womanizing, gambling. There's a reason we do those things.
Yeah.
Womanizing, for instance, people are like, oh, that's just what boys do. But why?
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're trying to validate yourself, or you feel empty and you feel like you can't be alone, which comes back to, once again, I feel like shit about myself. And when you're by yourself, the head noise starts and you have to actually be with who you are. Which is where most men struggle, right?
Of course.
Oh, I feel stressed from work, so I drink. It's a coping mechanism. It's still a lack of self-worth. I can't handle the things going on in my life, so I use something externally to help myself. Drugs, right? Why do we do that? Make myself feel more good. Make myself feel less bad. It's either a numbing agent or something to make us feel better.
Yeah.
It all comes back to that lack of self-worth.
Yeah.
And so with what I do with the men that I work with, it's like I position it as drugs and alcohol, self-sabotage. But obviously we take them through the journey of realising that it all comes back to a lack of self-worth. And if I had someone to help me to shine that light on myself and actually have a mirror to hold up to me to be able to see that, I feel like I probably would have saved a good, 6-7 years of my life at least.
Yeah.
And so that's why I do what I do, man. That's
like,
why I got into the men's coaching space, to help men to show up as better men, because, there's so many kids out there that haven't got present fathers. There's so many partners out there that are just begging for the attention of their man, right? And these men think they're doing nothing wrong because it's what all men do.
Yeah.
Which is fucking bullshit.
It is bullshit.
You know, and this is where like we get like, you know, this toxic masculinity and all that sort of stuff from. It's not
100%.
toxic masculinity, it's toxic men, full
Yeah.
stop. Toxic people.
Yeah.
It happens on both sides.
It absolutely does. You're like, man, you're like the definition of pain equals purpose to me, you know, like just the direct opposite of, you know, everything that you went through. Now, like just switching that and turning it and helping you, like the past version of you, like you're just that now, you know, you've got the wisdom, you've been on the other side of it, and you're like the survival guide. Like I like to say, you know, when we go through things in life, the shittest things and we get through them, like that, we have the survival guide to help other people through it.
Yeah.
And
you become that like, you know, that mentor to some degree. That leader that can sort of show other people how it's done, right?
That's right.
You pioneered it.
You've been first.
Yeah.
You've been first. You've been through the ups and downs, the heartaches. You've felt all the loss and the wins and everything in between, and you help people get there quicker so they don't have to suffer like you did.
Yeah.
So with the men, like, what do you think is the biggest reason why men struggle so much with a lack of self-worth? If we're going to underpin self-worth as like the main core issue, right?
Yes.
Low self-worth. Everything is just a symptom.
Exactly
from that.
right.
Why is it though that it's such a common thing? You know, we've got men taking their lives every day in crazy numbers. The statistics in men's mental health, and it happens in women too, but it's heavily weighed on the side of men. From your experience working with so many men, close to them, and all their struggles and everything in between, like what is it? Like, what do you notice? What are common themes that shows up that lead men to this place where they're just so low that they resort to drugs and alcohol and womanizing and everything like that?
I really love that question. I think it's a very interesting question. I think there's a lot of layers to that, right?
Peel them back.
I mean, if we go to like the root of it all, it's always childhood.
Yeah.
It always comes back to childhood, but there's so many reasons that men struggle with this shit, right? From a very young age, we get taught, you know, big boys don't cry, don't be a little bitch.
Yeah.
Vulnerability is weakness, right?
Yeah.
Once again, by our parents who were taught that by their parents. And it's generations and generations and generations of trauma, which is then put upon us. And we just get taught that this is the way to cope with things, right?
Yeah.
But it all comes back to childhood, right? Not getting your needs met, even though your parents, and you might not have had the most rough upbringing. I mean, a lot of the men that I work with had really sinister upbringings, really hard things they went through, you know? But then that also then leads them to be looking for those things in other places, you know, those things they were missing, the love they needed, the care, the nurturing, the feeling of enoughness, the, you know, validation from parents to let them know that they were enough. Because through those, you know, years of 0 to 7 is when that ego is developing, the most crucial years when it comes to development. And during those years, you might not have a present father, right? Dad wasn't there because he was working. And in his eyes, he was doing the right thing because he's providing for the family.
100%.
And all, you know, little Benny wanted was, you know, or little Chris wanted was dad to be there and play with him.
100%.
But he was too busy working.
That's right.
But in his eyes, he wasn't doing anything wrong, right?
Yeah.
And that then creates that, you know, need for, what? I need attention. And so then what you do is you look for that in everyone else. Right? So I guess the self-worth thing, it always comes back to childhood, but it's always going to come back to your needs not being met at a very young age.
Yeah.
And then looking to get those needs met, well, once again, with what I've seen, by other people, other things, or things external to you. So it's the external validation.
What do you think the men need more than anything in their healing journey? Like, you know, I've really sat with this, the stories around men of like you said, don't cry, don't be a pussy, this and that. What I really had to accept as I did healing, especially around like father wounds and even mother wounds, like I had worse, was that men need to be hugged just as much.
Oh, bro.
Men need
We all need a
closest
cuddle.
just as much. They love to be praised.
Yeah, man.
You know, like if we look at little boy, I have a little boy and a little girl, like I love him and I attempt to most of the time, no different to the way I love my daughter. It's like the love is the love, you know, like I show that love, I hug, I kiss,
Of course.
I have that closeness. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. What do you think men need most in order to heal? Like to actually accept that like vulnerability is such an important piece of healing. There's this quote that I was said once by a mentor and he said, vulnerability plus danger equals trauma, and then vulnerability plus safety equals healing.
Yes, I love that.
So the vulnerability is the common denominator.
Yeah.
But the difference is the danger and the safety.
That's right, and that dictates the outcome.
Yeah. So, you know, having worked with men, I'm sure that you've brought a lot of men home to themselves, right? And given them a community and a place to feel safe, to open up, to drop the walls, to get real and raw. What do you think men need more than anything else in order to heal?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Chris. Like, honestly, it's just safety. you know, a safe space where they can be their authentic self. Because, you know, look at society, and this is another thing I think that causes a lot of this, the lack of self-worth or the self-worth issues, is look at the society we live in.
Yeah.
If you haven't got this car, you're a piece of shit.
Yeah.
If you don't own a house by 30, you're going nowhere.
Yeah.
You know, if you haven't got a law degree, or if you haven't got a, you know, uni degree, you're never going to make it in life. And we get this jammed down our throats from a very young age at school.
Yep.
But then we bring social media into the picture, and it's just like you look around everywhere and we have this need or this want to compare ourselves to others, and it's just like this internal thing. It's like, if I don't have that, I'm not good enough.
Yep.
So first things first, I think, is obviously disconnecting from the world to some degree for men. That's how we can start the healing journey, because obviously the more that you're in these environments where it's like pushed onto you that this is who you need to be, you're going to always feel inadequate. Right. The second thing is that safe space, you know, finding a group of men, a community or something like that where you feel safe, because I mean, the traditional methods don't work.
Yep.
Go to a psychologist, go to a counselor.
Agreed.
Tell me about your feelings.
Yeah.
Okay. And why do you feel that you felt that way?
Yeah.
Fuck that. Okay. You're talking to someone about an ice addiction and they're telling you not to do it.
Yeah.
Just try not to.
Yeah.
Just try not to go and tell a crackhead just to try not to, you know, go and tell a heroin junkie that's hanging out for a shot of heroin. Just try not to.
Yeah.
Like, fuck off.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work, right? I'm not taking away from traditional methods. Okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Traditional therapies, there is definitely a place for them.
Yeah.
I 100% think there is.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, when you're talking to people that have struggled with addiction,
Yeah.
they need someone they can relate to, someone that's
100%.
been there, someone that's already done the thing.
Yeah.
Right, when you're talking to someone that's looking at you through their glasses and talking to you through a textbook, there's no relatability there.
No.
You know, it's like, and I'm not like, obviously this coaching space, there's a huge abundance of coaches now.
Yeah.
But like, you're not going to take advice from a 21-year-old life coach.
No, you're not.
Unless they've been through and they've got the credibility behind them.
Yeah.
You're not going to take that advice from them.
Absolutely not.
You know, they have to have been there first and gone through the things you're going through
Yeah.
for you to actually be able to respect them.
Yeah.
And so I think for a lot of men, that's what they need, is they need that space,
Yeah.
but they also need someone that's done the thing first.
Yeah.
All right? Because like, once again, you're not going to take advice about buying a Lamborghini from someone that's driving, you know, a Mazda.
No, exactly right. And men, I think men, we're very like evidence driven. Like
Yes.
we need to see.
Prove it.
Yeah. We need
Validate your shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I need to see someone that's like been before me,
Yeah.
you know? And I think, you know, I even think of how we operate just in life and in business. It's like, I'm very much a person who needs the evidence.
Yeah, 100%.
I need to see something. Like,
Yeah.
show me.
You said you could help me, but where's the evidence that you've done it?
Exactly.
How do I know that
right.
you've done the thing first?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And there's no better experience or no better wisdom than lived experience. Like,
Exactly
you can
right.
have all the book smart knowledge you want, but
Yeah.
if you've been through it, you know the cracks and crevices that no one has ever been to,
Yeah.
other than the people who have also been there.
That's right.
And I think when we look at coaching, like, you can go and get your NLP cert, you can get everything else under your belt, but still, if you don't have that lived experience, how can you truly empathize? How can you truly be compassionate?
And connect with what they're saying, right?
Exactly. How can you and not judge them, and not judge them, to hold compassion, to hold the openness for them to just be real.
Yeah, man.
And just connect with them on a person to person level, beyond what they're using, beyond what they're going through. They're a human being. And, you know, coming back to what I said before, I think there's so much shame too that comes with it.
Yes,
and
bro.
that makes us want to hide, because shame, that's what it does.
Yeah,
it says
that's right.
you're a piece of shit.
Yeah.
You're defective. There's something wrong with you. Isolate.
And what happens then, right? You get stuck in that spiral. It's like,
course.
I feel shame. I don't want to feel that shame.
Yep.
I'm going to go do the thing.
Yeah.
The drugs, the alcohol, the womanizing, the gambling, whatever it might be.
Make me feel good for a
Make
bit.
me feel good temporarily, but then I feel more shame because I said I wasn't going to do that thing.
Yep.
And then bit by bit, they're diminishing the self-worth. And so there's already, deficit of self-worth there, how
Yeah.
they feel about themselves.
Yeah.
But then the more and more they obviously do the thing,
Yeah.
the more and more they're diminishing that even further.
Yeah, and then
so the only answer to feeling good is, I do this thing that made me feel good once upon a time. But then your baseline for happiness is so fucking cooked that
Yeah.
the more you do the drugs, you just feel numb. You don't feel anything at all, right?
I remember saying to my therapist once, and she looked me in the face, and, you know, there's this part of me that is healthily, and maybe a little bit unhealthily at times, like, never fully satisfied with life. Like, there's always more to squeeze out of it.
Yeah, bro. I don't think that's an unhealthy thing at all.
No.
However,
Yeah.
you know, there's a fine line
Absolutely.
between that, you know?
I remember my therapist once was like, Chris, when you've done years of partying and living the highest of highs, you know, normal life is not going to feel that exciting at times. You know, there are moments.
Not at first anyway, right?
No, and you've got to balance back out, and it takes time. Like, it really does take time. But that's the slippery slope that they're obviously falling into. It's like
Yeah.
they can't hold it long enough to just restabilize, and then they're straight back into it.
Well, we live in a world of instant gratification, brother.
100%.
If I'm not getting the results now, I need the next best thing. Where's the magic pill?
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. I said this to Shani the other day. We were talking about, I don't know what we were talking about, but a friend of ours who went and did this like ridiculously crazy thing, paid for it to happen for the thrill of it, right? The rush. And I said to Shani, like, whilst that's awesome, it's also a slippery slope of like, once you start tapping into these territories, whether it be drugs or these really out there things that produce such a big surge of
like
dopamine and adrenaline
and things like that, you know,
and it's the dopamine. That's what neurochemically, that's what's happening.
Exactly right.
Huge rush, whether it's the drugs or not. Oh my God, now that new baseline is high, that set point, you're always chasing it, chasing it. And I think, you know, what I'm starting to notice from like listening to you talk is it's the self-worth is also tied into the self-trust of like they tell themselves that they want to stop, but they don't leave it long enough, and then they re-engage in the thing that they said they didn't want to do. So they start to trust themselves less and less and less. And, you know, everything is repetition. Do something enough, you believe it.
It becomes a habit, right?
You believe it.
That's all a drug addiction is. It's a habit, right? You're using a drug because you're trying to chase some kind of feeling, right?
Yeah.
But then you need that to even have close to what that feeling could be.
Yeah. What are some of the wins that you're seeing inside of your community right now? Because I see them on your stories all the time, and I personally love reading them. I mean, it's what you do is also very close to my heart.
Yeah, bro.
Purely too because for a long time I feared men. I feared men, and I didn't believe men were safe due to my father's presence.
Yeah.
So
that's fully understandable for obviously what took place in your life, man.
And the thought of, you know, opening up and being around men or being held in a way by men, I'd be like, fuck that. Like, you know, I generalized and just thought, you know, men can't be trusted. You know, they're all piss weak and shallow, and they don't care about themselves, XYZ.
Yeah, I guess on the other side of that as well, like for a lot of men, like thinking about joining a community, something like that, they think that it's going to be like just a whinge circle where cunts are just fucking bitching and moaning.
Yeah,
couldn't be any further from the truth, right?
Yeah. So what are some of the wins? Like, let's hear them. Like, what are some of the things that you're celebrating with your people right now? Like,
bro, like we've just come through the Christmas period. You know, most of my community, bro, I've got messages in there almost every single day saying like they went to their Christmas parties, they didn't get on the piss, they came home, they woke up next morning fresh, and their partner was absolutely stoked that they were actually home in bed. You know, they weren't out still bending with the boys. Like the observation I've had with what I do is that most men are coming to me rock bottom. Okay, they've got a broken business, they've got a broken relationship with their kids, they've got a broken relationship with their partner. They're literally on the bones of their ass about to break up. Yeah, you know,
or and suicidal things like that.
Yeah, man, it's crazy, right? But this is where most of the men come to me. They see me and they're like, it's a last resort.
Yep.
And it's gotten to that point because they just kept ignoring the signs. But like, I think I can think of 5 or 6 of the men. I've got about 50 lads in the community at the moment, right?
Congrats, man, that's amazing.
Thank you, bro. It's amazing. And I've capped myself. I've got like to actually quantify at 47.
Wow.
I capped myself at 50. So let's just say around 50.
Yeah.
And I'll only work with 50 men because I don't want to, you know, dilute the experience that every man is having within the community.
Of course.
And obviously anything more that I feel like I would really be starting to spread myself thin.
Yep.
But so one of the lads was literally drinking every day for the last 10 years. Absolute piss wreck. Business was okay, like not doing too badly. But wasn't present with his partner, wasn't present with his kids. He's now been with me 5 months. So with the New Age Man program, I was running a one-on-one prior to that.
Yep.
So he's been with me now for 5 months.
Yep.
And I only launched the New Age Man about 6 months ago, I'd say.
So it's still fairly new.
Yeah, well, the New Age Man is, but the one I had prior to that, what was the other name of the other course? The Happier, Healthier You program or something like that. But this was in a one-on-one capacity. Yeah. So I did about, let's say, 6 to 8 months of, maybe even 12 months of that.
Yeah.
12 months of like one-on-one before going into the community side of things.
Yeah.
And, but with the community, so I've got 5, this guy's been with me for 5 months, stone cold sober for the last 5 months, has had so many things come up for him, right? Because obviously now he's not dissociated. He's actually feeling the experience of life, which is emotion. Feeling all of it, right? The good, the bad, and the ugly. But his relationship with his partner is the best it's ever been, right? He's able to actually own the fact that for the last 10 years he was drinking every day and she didn't even know that. He was hiding it from her, right? And so their relationship is deepened so much because now he's able to be authentic and show up as a good father, right? His stepson, who is her son, has been able to confide in him safely, and I think he's about 15, right? And so he's coming to him now as a safe space because him and his dad don't get along. So this client of mine has become his safe space. His relationship with his daughter is the best it's ever been. Another client of mine who's actually in the process of coaching under me at the moment to become a coach within the New Age Man, which is amazing, you know, being able to spread this for other people and actually just expand is a big focus of mine this year. But so he was on the bags drinking almost every day, and him and his partner were literally, well, they were living in separate houses at the time. He is living back with his parents, and she was living in their house with their daughter. So, you know, he's got a little girl that he wasn't able to see all the time. Well, they're back living together. They're the happiest they've ever been. She's now starting to work through the stuff that's coming up for her because she's obviously seen the way that he's showing up differently. The relationship that he has with his daughter now, he's picking her up from school every day. And now, obviously, he's realizing how toxic the sparky industry is.
Yeah.
And he's like, I want to help these men. So now he's actually looking to become a coach to help people do the same thing as what I do.
So beautiful, man.
Man, I don't know how many of the guys that I speak to, they're literally living in a separate house to their partner at the time, and they've just come back together and they're in the best place they've ever been with their relationship. They're more present. They're better fathers. They're just, you know, actually meeting the needs of their partner and actually able to be that man that their partner knows they can be.
So good.
And this is like you can't quantify the wins that these guys are having because the mindset that shifts, obviously the drugs and alcohol, you know, there's none of that in their life anymore. And don't get me wrong, the boys have a slip up, you know, here and there. It happens. Yeah. But, you know, out of the 100+ men that I've worked with, you know, out of that, I think I've only had about 10, 15 that have dropped out of the program for whatever reason.
It's great odds.
And out of that, you know, this is obviously with the one-on-one stuff as well. But within all of that, every single one of them getting incredible results because they've got a community.
That's right.
Right. And for us as men, it's like we need to have that environment around us. Yeah. For us to actually, you know, like we can do it alone, but if you do it alone, bro, you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders by yourself. Yeah. And when you've got other men around you doing exactly the same thing, they're like, I want to be a part of that. I want to do more of that. When you see the wins that everyone else is getting, it's just like, I want to follow that.
So beautiful.
Man. It's incredible, bro. Like I actually can't put to words the gratitude that I have for the fact that I went through the things that I went through to be able to now do what I do. Yeah. Because it's and this is, I guess, the purpose of my business. It's like interchange. By changing the life of one person, in turn, we can change the lives of many because of that ripple effect. That's right. Because it's not just these men who are getting directly affected, but it's their families, their 100%. Friends, their colleagues, their kids. Like now you've got a kid that's growing up with a present father. Yeah. And we're now breaking generational bonds on a whole scale.
Yeah. I was just about to say that, bro. Like the things that you are restoring are like the foundations of what it means to be healthy, happy, and living a
how to be a high value man, right?
Yeah.
How to be a high value man. As simple as that.
Yeah. And, you know, it's really beautiful that there is programs like yours out there that can take men that are feeling very lost and feeling like they're carrying the weight of the world and using whatever else, you know, coping mechanisms to numb out, to having this place and this space to just, to do that work. Because one thing I know about men is that we want to serve. We want to show up. We want to provide.
Yep.
And when we have people around us that are like-minded, that also hold us accountable, like, you know,
that's a big thing, right?
It's
like calling each other out,
bro. That's it. Healthily, like you said, you're going to do this.
We've got to be challenged.
100%. Like if you're not calling me out, then, you know, do you really actually love me? Because, you know, I've thought a lot about this, and I think, you know, one of the greatest acts of love is, you know, reminding people of the things that they said they were committed to and the things that they want to do and the things that they want to achieve, because it's very easy to say things that are exciting when the feeling is there, but it's another thing to keep going when the feeling's gone. And to have people around you go like, hey, like in whatever way they say it, like, don't forget this is important. Don't forget why you started. Don't forget why you're turning away from that shit. Don't forget what's important. That's fucking priceless, man.
Well, it comes down to being an honourable man, right? Which is one of the key components and values of the New Age man, right? Yep. It's being honourable, being a man of integrity, doing the things you say you're going to do. Because this is the thing, as men, we are leaders. Yeah. Right. And we do currently live in a state of a lot of weak men, right? Which is why the world is in such a shambles at the moment, I believe. Yeah. And so, like, for simply to even just like if we come back to relationships, right? And I guess you guys would really understand this with you and Shani. Yeah. Like, as a man, it is our job to lead. That means doing the things we say we're going to do, showing up and holding space, right? Being vulnerable, because what that does is allows our woman to feel safe. Yeah. And we wonder why there's so many women out there that feel like, I don't need a man, right? Right? All these, you know, I'm not poking your stick at anyone, but like the feminist types that are like the independent woman, right? Yeah. Which there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. But
it is also creating problems in the world too.
Divide.
Absolutely.
Creating divide,
just as
right?
much as, you know, men feeling weak.
That's right. And I mean, this is the thing. If men were showing up differently, I believe, and this is why, once again, part of my purpose is helping men to show up differently, to create a global shift, you know, within the way that men do show up, because it's going to create a safer place for women to be able to do the things that they need to do and actually show up for themselves authentically as well.
And I can only imagine, you know, how much safety you create, because something that I really love about you, which I'm sure that all of you listening and watching right now could agree with, is that you just, there is nothing that you filter. Like, you just say it raw and you're open, and you use your story, you speak into shame, you speak in, you know, like you don't hide, Ben. And when people don't hide, then, and they allow themselves to be seen, then it gives other people hope too. Like if this man can stand in front of me and own it, all of it, like every fucking bit, even the parts that he still openly admits that he feels shame around, then fuck me, I can do it too.
Yeah.
And it's just so powerful. And it's part of the reason why I wanted to have you on, is because...
Thank you, bro. I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
It's beautiful to hear, man.
Like, I know people who are open with their story, but honest to God, I've never met someone probably as open as you are around what you're doing. But I also know that by doing that, you're helping so many people, man.
Yeah.
And
well, we've got to go first.
Absolutely.
You know, we've got to go first. But I think the other part of that as well is like the authenticity piece. If you're holding something back, people see that. People feel that. And like one thing that I think we are definitely lacking in this day and age is connection. And I mean, if you want to connect with someone on a deep level, be authentic, be vulnerable, be yourself, you know, and that will allow people to actually know you for who you are because they know what they're getting. And that's something I really pride myself on, bro. So I really appreciate you saying that.
Of course, man. Of course. Benny, the theme of this podcast is beyond what Shani and I do in the breathwork space. We bring in guests like yourself.
Yeah.
And part of our branding is like become limitless. You know, in the breathwork space, like, you know, for us, it's providing them with tools to work through trauma to transcend their own self-imposed limitations.
Yes,
but what we wanted from our guests was them to come in and share their stories, share what they do, share their expertise. But also, too, I love to ask a question as we're getting towards the end of, what does it mean to you to become limitless in your own way? And what I'd really like you to speak into more specifically is, what are the limitations that you've had to continuously overcome over and over again, the self-imposed ones, the ones from the external world that you've had to work through and feel and traverse through in order to get to where you are today? Because I'm also sitting here with Ben, who's 4 days into a fucking 7-day water fast. And, you know, when we look back at like you smoking ice every day and essentially...
I did that every week.
Yeah. You know, yeah, true.
7-day sleep fast at this point.
But what I think I'm getting at is like, there obviously the addiction was so strong that there was a lack of willpower to pull away at that stage. Now to being able to withhold from food. Now, like drugs is one thing, right? But food is actually essential for survival. When you take food away from people, the drive to find food is so strong. And we live in a world where food is a distraction.
Yeah, but it's obviously around us in abundance as well, right?
Exactly. You can fucking Uber Eats it. It's here. It's at the Woolies. You know, we didn't have to hunt and fight for it. And I said to Shani on the way down, I said, Benny's 4 days into a water fast. If I was you, man, I'd be like fucking delirious on this podcast right now. But she goes, is that like good for you? I'm like, well, Shani, think about it. Ages ago, like well back in human times, like we had to hunt and find food.
Exactly.
Go
right.
long periods of time without food.
Right.
So our nervous systems and our bodies were very conditioned to it. These days we're definitely not. But, you know, I'm curious, Benny, like knowing this now, seeing this version of you in contrast to that, like what is the secret? What is the thing, the juice, the wisdom that you can give the audience? What are the limitations that you've had to overcome to become this version of you?
I guess, well, becoming limitless is literally just taking away those limitations, right? It's really opening yourself up to the possibility of anything being possible, right? And so for so long, my reality was that I was always going to be a drug dealer. You know, and obviously moved from that into a PT, now into the coaching space. And obviously as I've done this, more and more opportunities have opened up. And so the limitations I had were, let's just talk back in the childhood, right? You needed a uni degree to do anything in life. You know, if you don't go to school, you're not going to get a job. All this sort of stuff. And so obviously then moving away from schooling and all that sort of stuff into the drug dealing sort of scene, I was like always sold on the fact that I was never going to be anybody. And I carried that across into the personal training world and even into the coaching career, right? And so the biggest limitation that I feel I had to remove was the fact that I myself am limited. You know, I myself am limited because literally you are capable of doing anything you put your mind to. And I'm living proof of that, right? 5% of the world that ever smoke ice will ever stop. That's the statistic that's obviously been done by the National Ice Campaign in Australia. 5%. So 5% of meth users, crystal meth, methamphetamine, will ever stop using it for good.
And the other 95 will keep going.
Continue. Yeah, they will continue.
Wow.
So that's why when they say like, you know, are you sure you want to try this for the first time? It makes a lot of sense why people would ask that.
And all those ads being like, you know,
not even once.
Yeah, not even once.
Right. So yeah, the biggest limitation was the fact that, and this is another thing as well, self-imposed, was I was always just going to be a junkie. I was never going to be successful in business. I was never going to be anything. And how do you overcome that? You just do the fucking thing. Why am I doing this water fast right now? Just because it's like I'm pushing myself to show myself what I'm capable of.
Love it.
People tell me, like, I've actually had this conversation with so many people this week. You're fucking crazy. Like, you can't do that. How can you go without? Is that healthy?
Is that okay for you?
I'm 4 days in right now, and I feel fucking incredible.
Yeah.
Right. We, I think, once again, we believe everything we hear. And that's actually like a good thing and a bad thing, right? So from childhood, if you're told that you're going to be incredible in life, you're going to do amazing things, fuck yeah, you probably will.
Yeah.
But when you're told that, you know, oh, well, you could have done better at that.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, look, you played really well today, mate, but you could have done better at this. What does that do to the brain?
You just hear the butt thing. You
That's
hear what's
right.
after the butt.
Puts a roof on.
Yeah.
Well, that's as good as we're ever going to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess, does that answer your question, bro?
Yeah, bro.
Yeah,
It's
becoming
just
limitless is
removing
just about literally removing the limits from yourself. And for me, becoming limitless means realizing that there is endless possibilities.
Yeah.
Like, I've got fucking huge goals, huge ambitious goals that people would probably tell me I'm crazy. And you know
What's one of them?
So I want to work with a minimum of, let's say, 1,000 people a year.
Nice.
You know, that's one thing, right? I will have a small style retreat built somewhere probably on land west of Brisbane, where I can take 15, 20 kids at a time from juvenile justice that are stuck in the cycle of youth crime to help rehabilitate them.
Love it.
That'll happen in the next 10 years. I can guarantee it.
Love it.
You know, that's what the interchange project's all about. You know, I will be starting a charity to help support young men who are stuck in that cycle that I was. And you know what? Once upon a time, I was a crackhead. How can you tell me, like, okay, let's just look at like the way these things usually go. Like, society would look at that and go, you're a putrid junkie.
Yeah.
You're a piece of shit. You're never going to be anything.
Yeah.
You know, so that's it in itself. Is like, what does being limitless mean? It means bucking all those trends of what people say about you and becoming the best version of yourself and realizing that there are endless possibilities.
Love it so much, man. Love your story. Love everything you're about. Love what you're doing, man. And
thank you, bro.
Yeah, if you're a man out there listening and you're like, whoa, like you're speaking to me, then, you know, I could not recommend Benny in this community anymore. I'm actually really excited to jump in soon and give a chat to your men with Shani. It's going to be fun.
Yes, bro. That's next week, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's next week.
That is next week.
I know.
I can't wait to have you guys come on and talk about communication. That's like boys, bro. It's going to be really cool to have.
Really exciting.
Also to have like you guys both on there.
Yeah.
We've never had that on the New Age Man, so that'd be really cool. Because we have a couple of females that have come on and spoke.
Yeah.
Tam's come on. Do you know Narita Bint?
No.
Emotional intelligence coach. I had her on a few weeks ago, and the boys froth her. So having you guys on and talk more about what you guys do, and I guess sharing your story with them will be really powerful, bro.
Awesome, brother. And so, where can everyone that's listening and watching find you? Where's the best place to hang out?
So Ben Lowe Coaching on Instagram. Make sure you type the whole thing in because I am currently shadow banned for some of the controversial content that I put out. It's bound to happen.
It is.
Second time in 2 months. So look, I ain't slowing down anytime soon.
And if you don't know what he's talking about, just give him a follow.
Yeah, give me a follow. Have a look at the content. You'll love it.
Yeah.
But
it's so real. I enjoy watching it just for the sake of watching it. I'm like, man, this is like as real as it gets.
And I have so much fun making it, right?
Yeah, you would.
I've got the boys coming around. We've got like lines of creatine pumping.
Yeah.
It's
so
better
funny.
than the Gold Coast cocaine anyway.
Yeah.
But,
and like one of the things that you probably, you know, once, you know, despise so much, like being at a bender at 5 a.m. in the morning, and now you're like making content around and taking the piss out of it and having fun.
Yeah, but I've been there, so I can actually do it, right?
And you know it so well. That's why your content's so good.
Yeah. So Ben Lowe Coaching, best way to get in contact with me. I'll reply to pretty much any message that comes my way.
Yeah, man.
And then also the Interchange Project for some really cool stuff that we're doing with the young men of the men and women of the Gold Coast. So yeah, Interchange Project is going to be a charity in the near future looking to work with young men on the Gold Coast who are stuck in the cycle of youth crime.
Beautiful.
And so we've got our Change for Good challenge coming up, which is going to be an annual event we're putting on. The beneficiary for that this year, so it's the 22nd, 23rd of Feb. The beneficiary for that this year is eSWAV. They're a charity on the Gold Coast who work with young men and women stuck in that cycle. Yep. And in the last 4 years, they've worked with 274 young men and women. And out of that, only 4 have ever returned to prison.
Wow.
Considering the reoccurrence rate and reoffending rate is 80% of these young men and women will end up back in jail in the first 12 months.
Yeah.
And they've got a 270 out of the 274 kids that have, you know, changed their lives, got pathways now to go and do amazing things. And so the Change for Good Challenge itself is a 24-hour event broken down into 5 smaller events, which is a 4-hour run, 4-hour downhill mountain bike, 4-hour gym workout, 4-hour pack march, and a 4-hour open water kayaking session, which is going to replicate a lot of the pain that these kids go through on a day-to-day basis, right?
Love it.
I mean, it's 24 hours. Seems like a lot, but it's nothing compared to what these kids go through every day within their own heads. And so whether you do one event, 2 events, or do the whole thing is completely up to the people, you know, getting involved, and they can do it as an individual or as a team. So quick plug for the Change for Good Challenge.
I love it, man. What an event. I'm so excited to see it all come to life. And I'll make sure that I'll get your link to your social profiles and we'll chuck it in the show notes for everyone.
Awesome.
But thanks for having me on, bro. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you, bro. I really appreciate it.
All good, man. Thank
My
you.
guy.